instance, because the way I've done it is I use the AI to kind of take my rubric and to help it. I allowed it to help me develop questions that I wanted to ask, and it basically kind of tiered them into, or put them in these little particular groups that kind of correlate with my PASO tasks. All right, so with that being said, you know, we went down to Dooley last week. We got to observe their problem of practice and kind of discuss with them their cycles, and then they came here to us this week. And although we did have a good moment to kind of sit and debrief with them as a team, and they gave us, we had an opportunity for them to offer us feedback. I wanted us to kind of sit as a team and kind of talk about the process that we went through and kind of reflect on the things that we did in case we're ever in another situation where we're part of another lit team or we tackle another type of problem in practice in our school. So with that being said, and every question is open for discussion, so as I ask it, you just chime in how you want, and everybody doesn't have to provide an answer for any question that is being asked. So when we think about the engagement and just reflecting over the entire process or the entire planning process, how effectively do you believe that our collaborative team members were integrated into the decision making of what we were doing?
I know the decision to do vocabulary is a conversation that you and I had, well, wanting to see how we could improve vocabulary is a decision that you and I, or something that you and I had talked about previously. And then you came to us and said, look, I got a great idea in terms of this Gleesy thing. Let's bring in the vocabulary and let's do it this way because you're doing your training, and you kind of connected it because of what the tasks that you have. And so because I was already on board with improving vocabulary, it kind of just all tied together. So I feel like I was an integral part of establishing that this would be our mission.
Okay, so with that being said, how do you guys feel as a team that we made all stakeholders feel included in what we were doing?
So I think we started out by getting the buy-in and conversations from our teachers. We shared with them the data from GMAS and for Beacon, where we identified that vocabulary area was one of our lower areas. I think the best way to describe it was, as we think about we describe it as the money or the areas that we leave on the table. And so when we looked at the third grade data, you shared that with the staff. And so then that way the staff kind of had their aha moments of, okay, for K2, this is what we can do in K2 to improve, because now we know that it's impacting our students 3-5. So I think the way that we shared the data from the assessments that we're taking and then the conversations amongst the teachers kind of helped lead them or lead us in that direction.
And you mean in terms of like when we just like decided on vocabulary or decided how we would go about it?
Well, because so we're the team, but in order to make this pervasively move through the building, those teachers would now become stakeholders in what we were trying to do. So how do we make them feel comfortable? How do we make them feel valued in what we were doing? So kind of from that point of view.
And I think the fact that we kind of took them through baby steps with it, we didn't just like dump, like we gave it in steps. So then we pulled another group in.
Okay.
And then, we added, additional teachers. So then we showed the teachers the different ways that we can do what explicit vocabulary instruction look like. So then we had another meeting where we talked through, so we had our cheerleaders. So we were able to, it's us, now we brought in a couple more. So now they're able to cheer on the initiative, and then we use them to talk to the staff. And then we also use our ladies here to go into the classrooms to kind of do observations, but before they did observations, they provided models for the teachers. So I think the steps that we took, even though it was, slower than what Glissy may have had in mind, I think it's the steps that we needed to take for our staff and understanding our stakeholders.
Got it. Alright, so describe the methods that we use together, individual insights before, during, and after group meeting. So, and I'll kind of jump that one off. I think one of the things that we were tasked with doing even before we started kind of putting our finger on exactly what we were doing was the perception data that we got from the empathy interviews. I think that allowed us to kind of get some insight on what the teachers felt was important, what they felt like their role was in literacy, and, you know, to help just garnish a little bit of buy-in, especially when you're tackling something like literacy in a building where everybody may not see them playing a role in literacy. Because it's very easy, just as a math teacher, you know, if you just think about it and say math, then you don't necessarily believe that you're part of making sure that kids is reading effectively, comprehending what they read, as well as the fluency of it. So I felt like that was that gave us good insight as to how each person probably felt across the building when it came to, you know, moving forward with our plan. All right, so let me ask you this. What methods are we using to get feedback from the team concerning the planning process? So like with you guys, like I want y'all to reflect on, once we start putting the plan in place, what feedback or what measure or method did we use to kind of, or did we involve ourselves in and kind of offer feedback on what we were doing? If that makes sense.
I need to.
So basically what I'm saying, so the plan was created, right?
Plan was created.
But we had multiple conversations about it. So how did we go about providing feedback on how that plan looks? Because the plan wasn't just this first plan and then we stuck with it. Because originally I was gonna do all the professional development. And then at some point we stumbled upon, okay, listen, Mr. Carter, you step out of it and allow it to be delivered by teacher leaders so that, you know, it can permeate a little bit differently, especially with me not being a reading teacher. So what I'm asking is what process did we go through to make sure that we could evolve or pivot at certain steps of our plan? If that makes sense. Am I convoluting?
Yeah, cause you said two different things.
Okay.
From the first question to this one.
Okay. But this is what I'm asking.
What are you asking?
What
What
methods
methods were used to get feedback from this team or the teachers?
This team. This team.
So I think that we had the observation tool, that we used.
Okay.
And so we had that, and then we really just had some anecdotal notes, like, you know,
Yeah.
we came together and like, we talked about like what we saw. Or we had conversations about what what feedback we received from the teachers during their different conversations, about how the instruction was going in their classroom. Because it provided us time to kind of delve into, I'll say case in point, for example. We were doing the pronunciation or sound for the words. And we realized that after our discussions, that the 3-5 teachers would have had experienced difficulty doing the pronunciation portion. And so because of that, we decided to make that change and shift to say that that wasn't what we were gonna do. Through our conversations, we switched from the possum over to the standard Freyer model that we chose to do. So those anecdotal notes and those conversations are kind of what help guide us to make those changes to move forward.
Right, and I would say, I think for me to solidify that, it might be helpful if we created some sort of Google form and sent it out to teachers, just to kind of get a feel for how, I mean, because we didn't talk to every teacher.
Right.
So it's hard for me to say what feedback. I spoke to speak to my team about it. I might speak to a few teachers here and there in third grade about it, but to know school-wide, some sort of document to see how teachers are feeling about the whole process might be helpful.
So I think with that, and I think we mentioned that for part of our cycle 3, is that we wanted to go ahead and do that Google form to be able to get that survey from the teachers and then also from the students to be able to talk about how they're feeling about the instruction, and from the students, do you feel that this is something that is helping?
Right, so that we don't, because right now, I mean, I know we are doing it, we have to do it, but to know if it's really something that teachers are feeling like they're adding into their practice
Right.
on a consistent basis
Mhm.
would be helpful.
Okay, well, so, cause I'm still talking about the planning piece, and, you know, we have met individually and as a group multiple times. And so, just, I wanna kind of reflect back on, did you guys feel safe in the environment of us having conversations? Did you feel safe, psychologically safe, not physically safe, to share your ideas, to give your input, to give your opinions about what we should be tackling and how we should go about tackling it?
Yeah, for sure, yeah.
So talk to about that process, like talk about what made you feel comfortable in it.
Well, the first, for the jump start, the reason why I was comfortable is because I want our school to win, I want our students to grow, and I know vocabulary is our lowest area.
Okay.
And so it has to be done, and so, and then when you came to me, I think you were getting ready to present it to third grade.
Mhm.
I appreciate the fact that you pulled me in and said, hey, I think we sat right over there. I appreciate the fact that you pulled me in and said, hey, Williams, I know vocabulary is your thing, how do you feel about this plan? So we had that brief conversation, even though I know you had wanted to move forward with it, I still appreciated the fact that you included me in asking me that, and you spoke to third grade. And so I felt very included throughout the whole process.
All right, this question I would probably aim more towards you, Dr. Broom, because as we started kind of, you know, moving it throughout the building and getting people involved, because, you know, our literacy team isn't just our fourth. We have like an extended version of this too, with the media specialists, a couple of kindergarten teachers, and so on and so forth. But this question says, how did we go about drawing out quieter members of the group? Because I know we had some people that were, once we got into that space in the media center, and we had more, because it was just more than you guys like doing it. Like, what was the technique or the method of getting those quieter members that are part of the team to kind of be part of the leading segment of it? Y'all get what I'm saying?
They were voluntold.
No. When she, for example, when we needed teachers to help support us in delivering for the students, when Dooley came, we politely went to some teachers. So I think relationships played a big role. Having relationships with people in the building, going to them and saying, hey, you know, I need your support with this, are you willing to?
Part of those relationships is they know they have the relationships of trying to hide. And so in knowing the staff members, some like to hide, and they have some specific talents and gifts, and so some of them will not like volunteer, and so it's like
so having that personal conversation.
That conversation, like, hey, like, so you're gonna, and they're gonna come to you, so that's where that volunteer.
So she's the ILT, so she could say you're gonna. I went to them and said, hey, look,
this is why we want you as part of this.
I need a huge favor, coworker and friend.
It
Could you please display your expertise?
It wasn't a you're gonna. I mean, Lauren has experienced the volunteer. It is very convincing, and they don't realize that they are being voluntold.
I think Lauren did. So with that being said, and I want to pose this question to you, Lauren. So, how did we go about making sure that the team, and now that when I say team, I don't necessarily even just mean our lit team, but you could answer it from that. How did we go about making sure that we stayed on track? Because with them giving us cycles and we having these touch points with, you know, Glissy and even myself from Castle, what do we do? How did we go about making sure that once we had those meetings set up, that we would actually have data or just information to talk about?
So I think especially bringing in the extended version of the LIT team, we had a purpose for everybody that we selected, and just making sure that they knew what we were doing. We were very intentional in giving them the reasons why and what we were doing to make sure they were comfortable before they were able to present it to others.
Okay. All right, so now this is to the group. What challenges do you think we had to overcome, like just through the planning process?
I think that, like what we discussed, introducing anything that people perceive as new can,
or extra
can cause a little bit of agita, is the word, but that's
I
not a
don't
word.
know that word. What's that
It's an
word?
Italian word, it means like, duress, you know?
Let's make that
Yeah, a little
vocabulary.
duress,
I'll do
it caused a little bit of duress, and so, getting teachers to understand that this is not just an extra thing,
that. Mhm.
was important. That was the main thing.
So to follow that one then, if we recognize that as a challenge, what would we have learned from understanding that it is a
And
challenge?
also, I had forgot what I was gonna say,
Okay.
but some teachers felt like, well, I already do something like that, why do I have to do this specific way? If I
Mhm.
already do vocabulary this way, then
Mhm.
why do I need to do it in this way? And so that is a challenge that I think we were presented with for a short while.
Okay, so what did we learn from those challenges, knowing that that's how they felt, and we were able to have a very successful, very successful formal observation of the practice and, the planning or the actual practice in practice?
Because I think once we started having those conversations, we made some changes during. So which means that we made changes where we incorporated the script.
Some teachers were allowed to do that
because-
second piece digitally, like,
Right.
being more comfortable
Like
with
we,
that.
we were able to make like some of those changes, like the teachers were able to see it modeled. They were able to have those conversations, and then later on, they started saying, oh, this doesn't take me longer than 5 to 7 minutes.
Mhm.
We started out with third grade as like the guinea pigs at first, so, so it kinda helped because we already had some people in the process, and so we were able to get feedback from those already in the process, so we can make our needed necessary changes, like, throughout.
And I think for me, as a teacher, I know I kinda took lead with it with my team, so maybe having, it might be important to have on grade levels, one person who is the leader in terms of ensuring that teachers know which words to use, maybe leading off creating the posters. I think that helped with my team because I was the one who started and I chose the words, or I made the posters and just sent pictures, so they didn't feel so encumbered with trying to do all of it. I kinda did a heavy lifting, so that when it was their turn, it was like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll do this. And so,
And then-
I know Baker did that for her team.
Right,
She
and
was the
then,
main one.
like, I provided time for them, for some of the groups in PLC, for them to go ahead and be able, for them to do theirs. For most of the teams there, I'll just speak even kindergarten, when they meet, they look at their, like, the standards and looking to see which words, like, looking at 12 powerful words, let's look at our standards. What words do certain things like have in common? That way the kids are hearing those words throughout, but that's their collaborative planning, like that piece of them. Ms. DG works out how how their sheet, how their anchor chart is going to look. They talk through the anchor chart, they talk through the questions, they talk through the situation of use, they talk about the student-friendly vocabulary word. Like, that is all a part of them and how that grade level cycles through their conversation for that portion of their plan.
Right, so what I heard you say was DG, she was the main one, so having someone on the team that leads it and kind of, like I said,
Spearheads.
does,
Right.
spearheads it, does some of the heavy
Right.
lifting helps.
And that, for them, no one was identified. It's like some of those people just happened organically.
Right.
But I'll add this too, because when I heard you guys both kind of speak to how you guys do it differently on your team, I think that the flexibility to have kind of your own individuality of how you tackle it and go about the process, because I really was surprised at the way you guys did it. You guys are very intentional with the words to make sure, because let's say if we cover 12 words, right? But the order of you covering them might be just as impactful. And so what I heard you guys say was that you look at, okay, these 12 words, which ones are showing up now?
Yeah.
And making sure that if you are putting these in practice, that you have real live examples that are gonna come up now for the kids to be like, oh, light bulb, I learned that word, I know what that means now. Now I can understand what the question is asking. So I think that flexibility allowed the compromise of us all getting together, because to go back to what you said, why am I doing this when I'm already doing something like this? I think what probably kind of resonated with teachers, especially for the ones that bought in, because when I go around and ask them, and I don't know if they're just telling me that because I'm the principal, but a lot of people said, oh, it made it make more sense when I delivered vocabulary instruction, because it was a set system, and they could see how each piece kind of supported what they were doing in the classroom. So that's what I saw, what I heard, not just having the conversations with you guys, and I'm really just thinking about how we got everybody to agree, because I do believe it does take somebody in each department to kind of say, all right, guys, this is how we're gonna tackle it. But to get us all to compromise as an entire building, I really feel like the flexibility allows you to have your own personal touch on it. Because it is a routine. And when it's a routine, that means it is a script. And so it takes the teacher's individuality out of it, but then you add it right back in by providing that flexibility. Okay, so let me ask you this. So what type of encouragement or feedback did you guys offer to the people that you were working with and supporting? Because you did observations, you guys also did some training of those, of the entire staff. So what type of encouragement did you guys give, or feedback did you give to make them understand it wasn't a heavy load?
Before we did beforehand, before we had Dooley come, well, I will say for me, I hadn't given anyone any feedback, to be honest with you. But after the observations, I did pop into a few classes and give just real quick feedback to Baker and Hyman. But prior to Dooley visiting, I had not given individual feedback to teachers.
Even when you had observed them?
I was out, but
Oh, you got it.
And I did give the feedback, and a lot of it is, especially with the lower grades, their main concern was having the younger kids do the writing piece and how much of that time it was going to take. So when they got to see me, I got a lot of, oh, that's not going to be as difficult as I initially thought. So then when I got to go in and visit them and seeing that they're implementing it in the same ways and give them that feedback that, yes, this is what we're looking for, I didn't have a lot of critiques really, because I think it is pretty straightforward, and once they got to see it, it was pretty clear cut. So, but overall, and even when Dooley was here, I think I spoke to most people that we came to see because they wanted to know how they did, what it looked like. So I was able to provide that feedback as well.
Okay, so let me ask you this. So moving away from the planning piece of it, because we naturally kind of flowed into the implementation piece of it. And I know, Lauren, you've done a lot of, because I've had you go do them on multiple days. And so what challenges do you see outside of time that we probably face or could face, you know, just even continuing this? Because, you know, teacher buy-in is always an issue. Somebody may not see that it has value to it.
Yeah.
But with everything lining up the way it did, and getting people from pretty much, because we pretty much had somebody from every grade almost, you know, model their classroom. What challenges do you guys foresee moving forward with continuing this practice?
even still, even though, and even with me, and I'll speak for myself, consistency.
Yeah.
Consistency, I didn't make a single poster last week, so, you know what I'm saying, just,
But you were
consistency,
testing last week.
I was. So consistency,
Mm-hmm.
just understand that this is, like we said, this is not just right now. This is
Yeah.
literally, next year, starting in August, you're going to start this process again, and it needs to be every single week.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if teachers need to put it in their lesson plans, I don't know if they need to know that someone's gonna walk around and look for their poster of the week, but something so that teachers know you can't slack on it.
Yeah.
Well, Aaron gave us a really good example, and I was watching the video that I had recorded in that session. And what he said was, he says, instead of doing sneak attacks, just plan it. Just say, guys, this week we're coming around to look at explicit vocabulary instruction. And when you do that, you do it enough, that before you know it, the horse and pony show becomes a real show. Because you faked it so many times. And so, as you say that, I'm thinking of, Dr. Broom maybe making a small little section on the lesson plan that says explicit vocabulary for
Mhm.
this week.
Mhm.
That way we'll know exactly what you're doing, and it's a part that you're filling out, so it kind of forces you to be intentional.
It does, it
Mhm.
does.
And I do think what would mainly stop people is probably the prep that comes before teaching it. So if they do it in the lesson plans, you've done
The work,
all the work.
yeah.
Mhm.
So you might as well go ahead and do it to the class.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so what process did we use to kind of collect student evidence or evidence of student learning?
Just anecdotal notes.
Okay.
And I do agree with Aaron when he said that we need to have some data, some numbers, some quantitative data. Because I can tell you, like I said in the meeting, but I understood what he meant. I can tell you that I am seeing my kids
Yeah.
see those questions on iReady
Mhm.
and thinking of the meaning of those words to help them answer the question.
Okay.
But having some sort of assessment will probably tie it all in.
I agree.
Okay, and so, yeah, we'll look into kind of building like little Freyer assessments.
But
And
that was my question.
so
I
I agreed and disagreed with them though, so, because remember, so as I look at it from the bird eye view, and I know they want there to be an assessment where you can put this quantifiable
Mhm.
data with it right then and there.
Mhm.
But what my real plan was for this, and it's not just my plan, but my just initial thought was, we gotta get kids to start understanding what they're reading,
Mhm.
what it's being asked of
Yeah.
them. And so even though I originally thought about this from, okay, let's improve vocabulary acquisition, I really want my kids to be able to understand all the tests that they're taking.
Right, and so that was my question, when we kind of were focusing on the Freyer model, I kind of wanted them to move away from that, because that's just the tool.
It is the tool,
We just
yes.
want to know,
Yes.
if you see analyze,
Mhm.
can you know that it means to analyze the picture and the thing, and
And
so
they-
what
and
I
they're
was
showing that.
thinking,
And they're showing
and they
that.
are, and so that's what kind of was bugging me out, but, what I had thought about doing for my students is having like a little quiz, 5 words that we've talked about so far with different definitions, seeing if they can identify the meaning of that word, and then seeing if I could, come up with a question or 5 questions that have those words in it to see if they can accomplish the task. So I wanted to try to figure something out. I don't know if I would use Illuminate or make up my own.
Because I think using Illuminate will probably be the easiest because it's already there, like the item bank,
Yeah.
I mean,
If I
it's,
could find,
there.
like, if I could hone in on those keywords, like
Right.
refer and
Mhm.
integrate, if I could hone in on questions that have those words,
Mhm.
that would be helpful, so that's what I was thinking about doing.
So,
so basically trying to see if they can perform the action
Yes,
Mhm.
yes,
that the question is.
yes.
Because I was thinking too, doing it in my class and removing some of the content piece, so making it a simple thing that you have to describe. So I can see, can you really describe,
Mhm.
and not just, I have to know this content piece that I may be lacking.
Mhm. And I agree with you. I think they were wanting to see if we could run, and I want to make sure we can crawl first.
Mhm.
And
I think we're crawling, but we're not standing.
well, no, but you know, I don't want us to crawl so fast that when we stand that we tilt over. So, and I get it, because they were focusing on, and I was like,
The
that
Freyer is just a
doesn't-
tool,
yeah,
we don't need
that
to
don't need
figure
to
out
be
that piece.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's just something that they can have and hold to refer back to,
Mhm,
it's
mhm.
just a.
Exactly. So with that being said, because I want us to, I'm gonna ask this last question because I do want you guys to get back to your classrooms and things of that nature. But with that being said, just as a reflection piece, you know, working in this team, one goal from each one of you guys about whether it's yourself, something that you recognize in yourself, or recognize working with this particular team, moving forward with the work that we're gonna do, because I do want this to be something that changes our culture. I'll start it off. All right, so one area of growth, that I think I was able to kind of get from it, and I still want to grow with it, is that being able to kind of delegate and let it go.
Mhm.
Does that make sense? And trusting the people around me so that I don't have to be part of everything, or have to speak to everything, or answer everything. Even in that debriefing session that we had, I found myself trying to make sure that you guys were taken care of. and you didn't need to be taken care of because you had already done all the work.
Mhm.
And so I wanted to be there to support you in answering it because I do live the work. And even though I'm not going into the classroom and doing it every day, I did a lot of the initial research. So
Right.
I've seen it and been it and done it. So I wanna kind of get better at saying, okay, let me step back and I know Lauren can do this. Leah, I've watched Leah do this. I know she knows the answers to these questions.
So for me, a grow would be, there are some, I don't always know what your thought process is, and so I would have liked to be able, and I know you wanted me to chime in more, but if I had more of that science of reading and more of the background to time to, I guess, study science of reading where you were really getting all your information from, I would have felt more comfortable speaking more. I didn't necessarily study it.
Got it.
Do you know what I'm saying? I got it from you,
Mhm.
and I understood what you were explaining to me, and I understand that vocabulary is important, but if I had studied it myself,
Your passion would have been.
my passion would have been a little more, and I would have been able to speak to things a little more, and that's why I was kind of quiet, because I didn't want to say the wrong thing.
And I was trying to support you. Saw me. I look at you and be like, okay, let me get it.
Yeah, and so I don't like that. I like to know what I'm talking about. I like
I
to
took
know,
care of you.
you did, but I
Okay.
like to know what I'm talking about.
'Cause
So
look,
I studied
She
it
was
myself.
giving me eyes, but
She was giving you eyes, but I'm like, say what?
But I was watching you guys and I was like, cause I don't know if you saw, I'll do this too. And I'll be like, okay, let me answer.
Yeah, but I don't like that.
I got it.
You know?
Got it.
And a glow. I got a feel for what it might be like, supporting teachers and, having to delegate and get feedback from teachers and knowing how to navigate relationships and personalities and
evaluate.
Yeah. So,
Okay,
a little,
okay.
little piece of that was nice.
Got it. Lauren?
For a grow, I think, especially since I'm newer, even being a teacher, so me taking on a leadership role, and that was a grow for me to have to really step up more in that aspect. And I think for a glow, I think overall the team did really well in breaking it up into chunks and rolling it out to really get the buy-in from teachers. I think overall the team did really well with that.
I don't wanna sound arrogant, but I loved our pace.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I
We
felt like
needed
it. I felt like it didn't cause unnecessary roadblocks. And I knew Glissy's pace, but I knew my Passel pace. And so I tried my best to kind of make it work in a way to where it didn't upset you guys, because I needed y'all to believe in what we were doing without me saying, okay, here's another thing, turn around, do it tomorrow, let's do
And
it.
honestly, we saw the flip side to that, and they were great. I loved going to Julie. I loved the school. I loved the staff. They were great. But if they would have slowed down a little bit and really kind of thought through some things, they might have had more growth in their
But they were
because
actually looking at tier 3 words.
Right, so I'm going to take the glows and grows for the perception of how we have rolled out, just our initiative. And so I would say our glow is the fact that we understood our stakeholders and understood the culture of our building. And we made the pace to fit what it was that we needed, and that we stayed, true to our process and talked to the Glissy team about, we understand that this is what you want, but this is what we need. And so I would say that is a glow for us, for our team. A grow for us in this measure is to work on making certain that we maintain our consistency, making certain that this isn't a 24-25 thing, but it becomes embedded as a part of our culture, and that we continue to find ways in which we can expand upon what it is that we are doing. An additional, I think, grow for us is to turn around and now, as we're deepening our level of understanding, but to now take our teachers through, like that Cox campus piece. Like, we have a lot of teachers going through the Georgia literacy model, so we have us going through the the letters.
Mhm.
But to now, maybe as we start for next year, having us look at those vocabulary sections in Cox campus, or at the end of this year, finding a way to kind of put a nice bow on, this is the work that we're doing,
Mhm.
this is our purpose, and then this is where we're going to continue to grow. So I think that will be important in listening to Leah and her grow, which means that during that time of looking at the Georgia Lit and like those modules, that way as she continues to delve into those, she becomes more comfortable
Mhm.
in what she's able to turn around and be able to speak
Yeah,
on.
Yeah,
and to
cause
deliver.
she probably gets my training.
Because we're
she's
going
in
through
the
letters.
But I'm like,
And then
I've
you-
watched a
yeah.
few modules, but I don't know, and I don't like being out of the loop.
And so that's an area of growth to be able to say, okay, so now this is what I know. So now for me in my role, I can say,
Yeah.
okay, well, Leah, since I know this is a growth for you, now you
I
can
wanna
do
see you doing
this, and this.
Yeah,
Okay. And
and so it strictly came, what you studied, it strictly came from
yeah, so what I did was,
the science of
yeah,
reading?
so the initial piece came from the science of reading, and then I
Okay.
kind of branched out and started doing some, cause the letters, resource has stuff that's already built, but what I wanted to do, because once we realized that we had to pivot,
Mhm.
I had to also pivot with the research, because if we were gonna be removing a component to ensure that we were doing it with fidelity, I had to make sure that there was other pieces out there that was very similar. So explicit vocabulary instruction is not owned by letters.
Mhm.
That's a practice that's out there. That's what it is.
Right.
But letters has, in their research, said, okay, this is what the whole piece looks like.
Mhm.
Well, if we're gonna take something out, what if you're taking out the heart? Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Because remember, our whole goal when we first started this was to move away from just word walls to also sound walls.
Mhm.
Well, right now, where we are, we're not ready for the sound piece. And so I wanted to support that initial piece of the instructional piece first,
Mhm.
and then we can move into all right, let's get our people trained so that we can do the sound piece. Because eventually, I want us to do the whole piece. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
I want,
It does, yeah.
I want my fifth graders
Yeah.
to be able to say, okay, let me see. Because it's gonna help with them being able to read.
Mhm.
Because you're gonna be teaching them the same skills that they would have been teaching them with Haggerty and those things. You just don't get the opportunity to
Right.
do that. You don't have the time to do that. Your mission is different, but it at least makes you feel comfortable when you see a kid that can't do it. You can put them in a small group and say, okay, let's start working on this. Let's break this down by the sounds. So, yes, if you go look through the letters resource, you'll become abreast of it. And what I'll do is when I
You have
finish,
it,
I'll
something to
give you
share
my
with
stuff.
me? Okay.
Well, so mine is the admin version, so it is not as deep as the
Mhm.
teacher version. So I get
Is it something I can purchase just for
you
my
don't,
own?
you shouldn't purchase it. What you should do is once they my kindergarten teachers, they're in their second year. They'll be done by May. She just pass that along to you.
Okay.
That's what you should do. Cause they'll be finished in a couple
Yeah, but I
months.
think the Cox campus stuff is free.
Okay.
But the letters book though,
And then
It's
there's
a great
vocabulary
resource.
sections in the Georgia Lit modules too.
you can stop the video, this month. But I do appreciate you guys. I appreciate